name is Rebecca, and that was a song of mine called The High Line. Thanks everyone for joining this weekend edition of Loog Fest. Whenever I get kind of nervous about things, or need to remember something, I'll make a song about it. So here's my welcome to Loog Fest song. Loog Fest, thank you. You really did a really cool thing. It's an online festival. And live from New York, it's a Saturday edition. My name is Becca, I'm a professor and musician and a DJ and producer and a motorcyclist. It's too many things to list, so I'll just get on with the workshop now. So thank you Loog Guitars for putting together this really fun festival for a month of weekends of interviews and performances to get us inspired to make the most of this time that we all suddenly have and create. And this is being done through interviews and live performances, and so many amazing people are involved. I'm really honored to be invited to this, so thank you so much. I'm gonna just scroll back to see, okay, cool, yes. We got, if questions are coming in and I don't see it, please forgive me and just ask it again. So once again, thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Rebecca. I'm a musician, producer, DJ, many things, and for about 5 years now I've been a professor of music technology, teaching at NYU, Ramapo College, Hofstra University, all about sound and many aspects of it, whether it's making sessions in Ableton Live, producing music, or preserving very old sound recordings. My major area of focus is actually preserving the first, maybe I should get out of this this mode. Whoa, no, I'm just kidding, not that one. Let's go here. Okay, here we are. So this is the world's first recorded commercially sold music format. It's called a wax cylinder. It is not a toilet paper roll. This is a record, and these were the first records that were ever sold and enjoyed by the public before the disc came along. And so I spent my master's thesis research with the Thomas Edison National Historical Park, learning about how to, preserve them, and there's just a treasure trove of these cylinders and sounds from them. So I like to sample these things as well as other formats. While I give you guys this background, I'll play some background music, and all of these songs are music of my students from the past 5 years. So if you're interested in checking out this playlist, it's called Loog Fest Background on Spotify. So these are my students' compositions from NYU, Ramapo, and Hofstra from the last 5 years. How do you play them? Oh, Rafa's asking, how do you play them? Do you mean the wax cylinders? I guess that was silly of me to assume that everyone would just know that the way that these records used to be played was on something called a phonograph. Now the word phonograph has come down to us from this device, and now it applies to record players. You'll see phono inputs on things, but it comes from the word voice, phono, and graph, to write. Those are the Latin terms. So before I dive into a history lesson of old music formats, I want to talk to you today about making music and using sound and sculpting sounds. So this is for kids, for parents, anyone tuning in. I would just want to give you 5 tips of mine from over the years I've been teaching. These are the 5 most frequent things that I'm constantly teaching my students. And we'll start with the first one. I have to flip it in order for you to see it. Tip 1 is to listen. So when I say listen, I mean listen to the world around you, because the world is your sound library. Out there you can capture, collect, and create your very own sound signature, instead of just settling for whatever sounds come with your synthesizer or music production program. You could have your own sound library. So in the palms of our hands, we are always carrying recording studios with us. We have recorders that we can use to capture sounds all around us. We don't need to use the same sounds that everyone's been using for decades. Even though there are undeniably some iconic classic sounds that come from drum machines like 808s and synthesizers like the Korg MS-20. So I'm not saying don't use those, but also, think about how if you create your very own sound signature, when people hear your music, they'll say, oh, that's that person's music, not, oh, that sounds like everything else. Tip number 2 is to dig. And when I say dig, I mean crate dig. This comes from a time when people hungry for music would dig through crates of vinyl records looking for all different sorts of new music that they didn't know they needed. And so I'm always telling my students to explore unfamiliar territories. Check out online archives, music from different countries, past decades and centuries. As you saw, I have sound recordings from 1890s and early 1900s. So it's funny, whenever people ask me, what kind of music do you listen to? I'm not saying, oh, I like everything but country. It's funny, I'll say, oh, last night I was listening to vaudeville music from 1890s. And yesterday I found a Josephine Baker 78 record that was a bootleg from a record label called Jolly Roger. So anyway, crate dig. And the internet now is our crate. And we can dig through all of these amazing places to find sounds. Just as an example, you can go online and rip audio from a YouTube video and use it to create something. My friend Daniel the other day showed a video of him taking a sound from a video of a pancake being slapped onto a wall and then using that as a snare drum. So you could take a sound of something and then turn it into an instrument. For example, I could take the sound of a frying pan sizzling, and I can add that to my track at a low volume, filter it down a little bit, and now it sounds like a vinyl record. So that is my tip number 2, is to constantly be looking out for sounds and explore unfamiliar territory when it comes to music. So when I tell my students to look out for these sounds, before I even do that, the very first assignment that I give them is a listening assignment. And it is to go out and with a piece of paper and a pen, sit down in a spot outdoors and listen to the environment around you and write down every single thing you hear in great detail, all the different sounds, pinpoint all of them and describe them, their pitch, how loud they are, how the sound changes over time. So to use your ears to really filter out different sound events that are all happening at the same time. While this is happening, I ask them to have a sound recording device like a regular cell phone and record that duration of time, and then to go back, listen to it, and then again write down every single thing that you hear, describing in great detail. So this is an assignment in active listening versus passive listening. So when we're listening to sounds, we are perceiving them because we all are humans with different shaped ears, different life experiences, and we have endured different sounds. Some people are pitchy, they're called, if they don't have pitch. So when we talk about sound and make sound with music, we talk about sounds in objective and scientific, quantifiable terms, but also in subjective terms. So when I say the pitch of an instrument, my pitch is my perception, or it's something that we fix on a scale. But if we want to scientifically talk about that pitch, it's called frequency. Frequency referring to a sound wave and how many cycles a sound goes through compression and rarefaction of molecules. I swear I'll be done with the nerd talk in just a sec. I just want to describe what sound is, and I think the best way to do this is to draw it. And I'm going to invite everyone to get out a piece of paper and markers or pens and get creative. One of my favorite things to do is to draw sound waves. And I have this animation here which is going to do a really great job of describing it. So as we look here, we have a tuning fork that has just been struck. And as it's struck, the prongs are resisting and creating these waves in the air around it. Because to have a sound, we need an event to take place, a sound event, and then a medium through which it travels, and then the receiver to receive it. So if we take out all of these air molecules and just focus on these, we see that they're knocking together and then coming apart. For every action, we have an equal and opposite reaction. So when these air molecules compress and collide into one another and then come apart, it's one cycle. It's one, and when we focus just on one wavelength of this, we can start to measure how often this happens and the frequency of it all. So sound doesn't only have to travel through air, it can travel through water and gas, but not in a vacuum. We can use an oscillograph to visually represent sound, and this is when we look at computers and look at sound waves in audio programs. This is kind of what we're looking at here. We're looking at the displacement when the air molecules come together and compress in the positive region, and then when they come apart and rarefy, this is what's happening in the negative region. And that line in the middle is the silent zone. So if I have a sound that I've played very softly, the amplitude, the maximum displacement from that silence line is going to be, pretty low. But the more that the sound is going through these compressions and rarefactions, this is when we're going to see louder displacement. So we can actually measure what's called amplitude. Volume is how we perceive it. Things can be loud to different people, Something that may be loud to you may not be loud to a person who has spent a lifetime going to really intense concerts and having, ear damage over time. So one of my, this isn't one of my listed tips, but one of my biggest tips I tell students is to protect your ears. If you're going to choose to make music as a living, Your ears are your livelihood. This is how you make your living. So you should protect them at all times. When you go to concerts, when you are... Oh, for me, when I ride my motorcycle and I'm I have a lot of just white noise being blown at me, I wear my earplugs. And don't listen to music at too loud in your volume in your headphones. So I asked everyone to get out their pieces of paper and markers. If anyone has, please say yes, and I will continue with a drawing activity. If not, I'll move on because, I want to move on. So please tell me if you want to draw sound waves. If not, I will continue. And we can go straight onto the, into sound trap. Okay, Vlad says yes. So I'm going to do a quick drawing demonstration of sound waves. So, okay, Kristen says draw. Everyone says draw. Wonderful. Okay. So let us go here. Oh, look at that. We have our blank canvas, and let's see what else I have. I have 2 different colored pens, and we're just going to do a joint drawing activity to really understand what's happening with sound. Okay. So on our x-axis, we're going to make our line here. This is going to be amplitude, volume, and then we're going to go across time. So we have time. Oh, that was our y-axis, sorry. So time is in our x-axis, and then in our y-axis we have amplitude. So the silence is here. This is our equilibrium silence line, and that's going to be 0. And then everything above this line is going to be in the positive. Now, when we measure sound, it's usually in volts. I'll just put plus 5 volts. And then everything in the in the negative zone is minus. We'll do minus 5 volts. So now I'll get a different color, and I'm going to draw a sinusoid like this. So when I have one cycle of sound compressing and rarefying, this is where all of those air molecules come together. Get a different color marker and just knock them together. Boom, 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 boom. Air molecules coming together. And then for every action, we have an equal and opposite reaction. Yes. So a partial vacuum is formed between the air molecules, and then they come apart from one another. And, there's social distancing here. They're at least 6 feet away from each other here in the negative region. So here we have our positive compression, and then we have our negative. So how many times this happens in 1 second is called the frequency. Literally, how many times does this happen? How frequently does it take place? And this is measured in a term called hertz, which looks like this when we measure it. Does anyone know the range of human hearing in hertz? How we can hear? It starts really low at 20 cycles per second, 20 hertz, and goes all the way up to 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. So do sounds above that exist? Very good, Rafa. You get a gold star. So we know that actually this isn't where sound ends. It's just where sounds end for us. But for animals like bats and dogs, they can hear higher than humans can, and they can hear above 20,000 hertz. So that's why when there are dog whistles, dogs can hear them, but we can't. So it's good to know this, because when we're doing sound recordings, we don't really need to record sounds higher than this, arguably, because we're just not going to hear them. But that doesn't mean to say that it doesn't have an effect on sounds that we are using. So that is a quick explanation of how sound works. Those are the bats that can hear higher than humans can. That's my audience here, just in case nobody came to this thing. Okay, why did I talk about that? Because sound waves, like those perfect sinusoids that I was drawing, I don't mean that I drew them perfectly. What I mean is that just like a perfect circle is 360 degrees, a sinusoid is a perfect sound wave that doesn't happen in nature. It happens in electronic music. Okay, so we can use sine waves that look like that, and there are also other shapes in electronic music, and they look like these. So here on the Korg MS-20, we have different sound waves to choose from, like triangle, sawtooth, and square wave, and we can control the pulse width modulation, meaning what the width of that square wave can look like. We also have noise that we can choose from. So we see that these sound waves are parts of the oscillator. So oscillator refers to that very motion of sound compressing and rarefying. I kind of think of it like a hula hoop, and sound is coming together, and it's this three-dimensional thing that we can just make a 2D representation of and stretch it out on a line. And you hear that sound, that's my cuckoo clock going off, my very good timer, letting me know what time it is. Okay. So I used to work at a company called Little Bits, and Little Bits makes this incredible synth kit. They make all kinds of electronics kits to teach electronics in a way that is really simple by snapping things together with magnets rather than wiring, soldering, and hot stuff and burning your fingers, snapping things together and creating circuits. So this synth kit that they made is actually modeled off this synthesizer here. And that oscillator I showed you there was recreated to be an oscillator here. Oh yeah, so I have to do it this way so it's not reversed. So here we have a very simple oscillator, and we can control the pitch, or what we know is scientifically called frequency. And here we have two options for different waveforms. One is a sawtooth wave. So I have a little synth set up here. Okay, sorry, I paused it for a sec. I think we're back. Okay, great. So we have a little synth set up here to demonstrate the basic building blocks of synthesis. Okay. So here I have a sequencer, and the sequencer refers to the sequence of notes that I have adjusted here to be 4 different sounds. Okay. And up here I have something that is shaping the sound called an envelope. So the attack is how soon is that note going to come in? And I will turn down that music for a sec. How soon is that note going to come in? So when I turn the attack up, it takes a long time for that note to reach its maximum amplitude before its release, or here called decay. So when I make the attack really short and the decay really short, it makes the note really soft, really short. And actually, playing with this is how we can get drum sounds on different synthesizers. Usually envelopes have attack, decay, sustain, and release. But for something like this, we can use just these two parameters to control and make sounds different from one another. So envelope is just one example of something that can make one frequency or one pitch of a musical sound different from another one, because if we play one note on one instrument, how is it going to sound different on another instrument? Well, things like the physical, body of the instrument will have an effect, but how it resonates through things, but also the time, things related to time, and the spectrum of sound, because sound is not just made of these simple, perfect sinusoids. Sound is complex. When you see a waveform on a computer, you see that sound is, all over the place and scrambled, because it's made up of multiple frequencies. And the one that we refer to, such as the note A, concert A, 440 hertz, that note is actually at 440 hertz for its fundamental frequency, and then everything built on top of that are other frequencies. So we can use something like a filter to shape the spectrum of sound. So when I turn down the cutoff, I'm not really adjusting the volume. What I'm actually doing is adjusting how wide of that spectrum from, say, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, how much of that am I allowing to filter through? Now, a door is a good example of a filter. When the door is closed, you can still hear sounds coming through it. And then when you open the door, you're allowing more sounds to come in. So the filter, I recommend to a lot of music makers to use filters to bring in instrument sounds as opposed to just doing a regular fade in of volume. Okay, so this is an example of a simple synth setup. And so with synthesizers, we have oscillators, which is the source of sound, and then we can attach something like a keyboard, not just a sequencer, but we can attach a keyboard to it to actually control that sound. So if I turn up my filter here, I have a keyboard here, and it's almost like a remote control for this oscillator saying, hey, start here, and then go up a little bit. So the frequency is getting higher and higher, the wavelengths are getting shorter and shorter, and it's just giving that instruction to that guy. So the synth kit is really fun, but what's even more fun is when you connect it to other things. So you can connect this to giant monster synths like the one I have in my studio, but also like other ones, because you have a CV, control voltage, that you can send in and send out. So you can use little bits to play other things, and then you can play other things you can use little bits to play other things, and then you can play little bits with others. So it goes both ways. And then one of my other favorite things to do is to connect it with MIDI. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about is MIDI. And I want to show you how we can use MIDI with this online synthesizer from Ableton Live. So if you at home have your computer with you, go to Learning Synths from Ableton Live, pull it up, and I will show you how you can use your computer keyboard to control a synth. We're going to make a quick song, and then I'm going to close out with a song. And so, okay. What is MIDI anyway? MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. So here I have an interface that can help me connect from this device to my computer. But MIDI was invented long before the MacBook and Little Bits. MIDI was developed as a protocol, as a way for many different electronic music instruments to communicate with one another. Because when the boom of electronic musical instruments happened in the 70s and early 80s, you had manufacturers from Japan and Australia and the UK and United States, all with different different power and electrical voltages. So it was a nightmare trying to get all these different devices to communicate with one another. So if I wanted to get this drum machine to communicate with this drum machine, how could I do that? It's not as simple as just plugging in a guitar cable. MIDI came along and set up a standardized protocol so that I could have one cable going in and one cable coming out. And then they just, communicate back and forth to one another. One is called the master, one's called the slave. And then you could hook up multiple MIDI instruments to one another in something called a daisy chain, so that they could communicate and play with one another. So the MIDI cable isn't really that ubiquitous anymore in electronic music instruments now that we have things like USB. So on many MIDI controllers, you'll just see it called MIDI, but it doesn't have a MIDI cable. This is what a MIDI cable looks like. It has 5 prongs. It's called 5-pin DIN MIDI. And it may look familiar to you because it's kind of like a microphone cable. So microphone cable has 3. But microphone has 3 that come out like that, and then it also has 3 that go in, whereas MIDI cables are always going out, and then you can have in, out, and through for the MIDI. So speaking of drum machines, I want to do a quick name that tune with all of you who are tuning in. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to play some music now, and just a couple examples of drum machines throughout history that have made a huge impact on music. So I'm wondering how the lag is because it seems like it's a little late, but we have the best-selling 12-inch of all time starts with a drum machine, and it sounds like this. So can anyone name that tune? Blue Monday, that's right, OJ. So, that is an example of a drum machine and how much of an impact it can have on a song. This is what the record looks like. It looks like a 5.5-inch floppy disk with the words New Order, Blue Monday encoded in color on it. So if anyone is born after 1990, they don't know what a floppy disk is. This is a nice big representation of that, and that's how you used to have to program electronic music. So because of that amazing drum beat in the beginning, this became the #1 selling 12-inch vinyl record of all time. Yes, designed by Peter Saville. Beautiful, beautiful album cover design. So drum machines can be important, even members of the band. Bands like Sisters of Mercy even credit their drum machine, Dr. Avalanche, as one of the members of the band. So I encourage you to explore drum machines of all kinds, and don't feel like you need to get like a 303, which is like over $2,000 on eBay, to be able to make techno music. Which brings me to my third tip. Don't have any limits. No limits. Don't feel limited by the tools or technology that you have access to. Use what you have and use it to the max. So you don't have an 808, you don't have a 303, but let's say you have this weird Boss DR5 drum machine that somebody gave you. This ended up becoming the third member of my band, and I used this as much as I could and found out everything I could about this thing, so I could, become an expert in this particular drum machine. So when it comes to drum machines, you can find all those sounds anyway. No, Rafa, that's funny. It's a cute drum machine, isn't it? So don't feel like, you don't need a beautiful old sports car when you learn how to drive. You don't need the technology to define you, or think that, it's going to make a huge difference in the way you make music. It's all about you and your talent and how you make it. So for drum machines, a lot of them are available online. You can download the sound libraries anyway. So one of the things I wanted to do today really, really quick is to show you some tools online for making music. So there's something called Soundtrap from Spotify. Soundtrap is an online digital audio workstation that you can use. I'm encouraging everyone to use Soundtrap at home for kids starting out to make music, because you can not only use it to make music, but you can use it to collaborate with people and send sessions really easily to one another. And another thing I really recommend for everyone is from Ableton Live. It's called learningsynths.com. It's an amazing way to explain all the principles of synthesis, and it does this through these interactive squares that you can click and drag to hear how sounds can be modified, and you learn about all these different things. But what's really fun is the playground. Here, you can use your computer keyboard to make sounds and hear how they change. It's hard to do this with one hand, but here you have your own synthesizer, and it visualizes in such a beautiful and clear way, and it'll really help you get the concepts of synths. And so the idea is that when you look at any synthesizer, you can walk up to it and start to play it by adjusting these parameters. There's a way here. Yes, you can select MIDI input. And so what I like to do is sometimes hook up little MIDI controllers to that thing. Yeah. So those are some tools that I just wanted to show you, and those are some concepts for sound. That website is called Poems for All. That website that I just showed is called learningsynths.ableton.com. And then when you go to that site, you can click on on the sidebar, and it'll take you to the playground. So the playground is the virtual synth. So I mean, there are so many resources out there. I just wanted to show you just a couple of them. And it's funny. I had this whole playlist of name that tune for different drum machines, and I mean, this is a topic that I could go on for semesters all about. But I just wanted to highlight some of my favorite things about making electronic music. Before I go and give you one last song, I'm going to give you 2 more tips for making music. One of them, as an archivist, I have to tell you, is save your stuff. Save your stuff, please. I can't tell you this enough. Have a good naming, organization, filing system. Don't use the system of the song final. This is really the final song, .mp3. Maybe start with numbers and start like maybe 01 underscore and come up with your own filing system that will make it easy to remember. And save it in multiple places, on a hard drive, in the cloud, on a portable hard drive. And don't just save the final MP3, the final song. Collect all and save. Save the session, all the samples you created, all the different versions. Because today's trash could be tomorrow's treasure. I can't tell you this enough, how often I am looking for that one demo that I did 6 years ago. At the time, I thought, oh, this is no good. And then years later, you're like, oh, there was something in that I want to use, and it's hard to find. Yeah, save your stuff. And let's see. Oh, my last tip is to save it on a wax cylinder. Save it on all formats. Save it on a wax cylinder, save it on cassette, floppy, but not DAT. Digital audio tape, that was a really bad time. We don't want to save it on DAT, ever. Okay, the last thing I have to tell you is to let it go. Let go of your musical babies. Let it go so you can grow. Set your songs free. Don't hold on to them. Don't think that spending so much time making it perfect is going to be worth it. You need constructive feedback in order to get better at making music. So I really recommend, don't, just hold on. Don't hold on to that song forever. Thinking that, one day it'll be ready when you keep working on it more and more. Yes, OJ has correctly identified the Name That Tune portion of this. I had this on the playlist to show that this drum machine is the same as this one. So those are all my tips. And now it looks like I have some questions. So I'll answer a couple questions, and then I have to let it go so we can go and let it grow. Okay. Paul G. DeBlock says, not dat? No. Ain't nobody got time for dat. This is Paula Cerno. How do you make the music sound good? Well, good is subjective. And I make it sound good by using my ears and intuition. So what feels good, that's how I know. There's no recipe or formula like, oh, you have to use this compressor and this type of reverb and this drum machine and then it'll sound good. There's no recipe. Use your golden ears. And OJS says, how do you start writing your songs? Each time is different. Sometimes I'll just start with a drum beat and I'll say, okay, here's a drum beat, 120 BPM is the tempo. Let me start adding synth pads to it. Let me just have this note. And then let me use an instrument nobody has. Okay, I'll loop my voice 10 times and then chop it up to make a rhythm. And then there are other days when I will spend time dissecting an old recording so that we can create something new out of something else. I recommend using different techniques. Don't just get stuck in the same pattern of, oh, every time I write a song I have to start with drums and then add different things on top of that. Start with the bass lines one time. And writer's block is frustrating and it's annoying because when creativity strikes, it's unplanned. So you can't plan to be, like, you can't say, okay, at 5:30 I'm going to be creative. It's hard, but you also can't wait for that moment to happen, for it to strike. Catatonius asks, where can we find your songs? Like the one at the beginning. So Loog has been tagging me in the posts, and my Instagram handle is @Rebecca_Yurivna. On my Instagram page is a link to my SoundCloud, and you can hear a few songs there. And the Highline song in the beginning is one of my musical babies that I haven't let go of yet. So after today, it's time. I'm going to let go of this musical baby, and I'm going to put it out. I'll put it on my SoundCloud, and and it's there. So you can check out my music there. And I'm going to leave you now with just one song. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been so fun. And I'll see you on the interwebs. Thanks everyone for the support for the Highline. Thank you, Loog Guitars, so much for inviting me to do this. I'm really honored. Loog is amazing. I love the work that they do, making guitar fun for kids and adults, for anyone who wants to learn how to play guitar. Loog is such a beautiful design and just really fun. And I'm so happy to be a part of this. Thank you all so much. I'm going to leave you now with a song called Sundance, which is kind of appropriate. We were expecting a lot of snow, some kind of weird freak polar vortex, and we got sun. We were blessed with a beautiful day in New York here. If you, where else in the world are you? Please let me know in the comments. I want to know where you're all tuning in from. So big love from New York. Oh, I didn't get any. You got a hailstorm? Wow. Oh wow. Thank you, Catatonius. I wish all my students said that at the end of my class. It's so nice. But I think we get better as we go. Okay. LA, Los Angeles, so cool. Amazing. Uruguay, of course. Whoa, and we got someone all the way in Queens. Wow, this has really been amazing. Greece, oh, this is so cool. I gotta go. I have 1 minute remaining. I leave you now with Sundance.